Okay, I'm Semil Shah. We're here at Coastal Ventures. It's December 2014. Year's wrapping up. Keith, great to see you.
Great to
for
see
the
you
final
again.
interview.
I know, it's scary.
It's scary, I know. It was great to have you for the whole year, and everyone has remarked to me that they love hearing your insights, whether they agree with you or not. They like hearing it. So I got a lot of feedback saying, just talk to Keith about payments. And so I thought, okay, what are we going to talk about? Get your quick view on Apple Pay, just at a high level. What impresses you about it? Maybe some holes in the strategy, if there are any. And could it be the greatest product release of 2014?
So I think there's two things about Apple Pay that are important to discriminate between. One is removing friction, and the other is value proposition. So there are a lot classically in new payments and new products, a lot of hurdles, barriers, blockers to adoption. And historically, most of the mobile payments products have had a lot of those. For example, adding your credit card. Second, unlocking the phone, opening an app, all of these like steps. And they're painful, and so users, not surprisingly, don't do it unless the payoff is massive. So what Apple Pay has done is got rid of most of the blockers, so there's a credit card on file for everybody who has an iOS device, so it just works. Then there's the fingerprint sensor, the Touch ID, which just makes it easy, intuitive, magical to unlock the phone, even if the phone is in your pocket, or you barely can look at it, or you're juggling things in a checkout line. So Apple Pay gets rid of all of the reasons why a product won't work. It's not yet clear how much of a value proposition on top of the product, so i.e. the positive value proposition that they've actually created.
Because right now when I'm going to check out at the grocery store or whatever, it's not that much different than me swiping my card, right? The action, actually just to take the card out and swipe versus take the phone out and pay, is almost kind of similar.
Well, the fact that they've got it to be almost similar, though, is a pretty good first step, because most mobile products, most advanced products are actually worse than using a credit card. So it's not surprisingly they fail unless they're heavily subsidized. So for the first time, someone's created a product that's as intuitive and as easy to use as swiping a credit card. I think when you see the watch launch, I think that will start showcasing new ways to use Apple Pay that are even better than using a credit card. You can imagine wearing something on your wrist and being able to just kind of go something like this and pay for something. And that's very natural and intuitive. I think that will also really take off. And then because it's observable, so if I'm in line and I start doing this or I start doing this, people will see that. That will start to spread. The other major thing about Apple Pay that people miss all the time is so much of the world is moving, so much of the transactional world is moving to Uber-like or Instacart or DoorDash-like experiences that they're actually substituting for swipes. So historically, if you didn't take an Uber, you took a taxi and then you pulled out your credit card and swiped. Every time you take an Uber, you're substituting for a real-world credit card swipe. Same thing, Instacart. If you went to Whole Foods, you would swipe your credit card or debit card at the end of the transaction. Now you're paying through Instacart. So as more and more transactions shift into apps as opposed to swipes, effectively Apple Pay becomes more successful anyway. Then at some point your brain is so accustomed as a normal default to paying through an app that it becomes natural to grab your phone to start paying for things, because that's what you do. Remember the first time you took an Uber? It felt anomalous to actually have the payment taken care of. Yeah. Now it feels normal, and actually you start feeling anomalous when you have to pay.
Right, exactly. One technical question on, let's say somebody's at the groceries at Whole Foods paying with Apple Pay with their phone. Does their credit card need to be present on them?
No.
No. And has that typically been a rule? I was just curious, like where they say card present transactions?
Yeah, so historically the way payments infrastructure works is there's a little bit of a embedded code sort of in the magnetic strip on the back of your card. And if that indicator is swiped through a reader, then it qualifies for a lower rate than if just the credit card itself number is inputted. And so that's how it works. So I believe that this is effectively emulating some of that, but no one's really exactly written a perfectly transparent post on what the rates being charged to merchants are and how that works within the grand scheme of things. But historically, you had to have the card physically present, and the way that they could verify that was that presence of that secret sort of 3-digit code.
And is it by being vertically integrated that Apple was able to pull this off, whereas Google Wallet probably?
Yeah, well, I think the Touch ID is more important than people realize. Without Touch ID, this product is a failure. And so Google, Android devices don't have a high-quality Touch ID.
So it's beyond just opening the phone, the Touch ID for verification of
It's
identity
both.
presence.
It's both on being able. If you had to unlock your phone and put in passcodes, it's a non-starter. the fact that you even have to pay attention. So it's so easy to use Touch ID that you know you're unlocking the phone without having to look at the phone. I mean, imagine coming to the grocery counter with a lot of things in your hands and then trying to pay. You can just do this kind of invisibly. It also works, as far as I can tell, in areas that don't have like Wi-Fi connection and cellular coverage. They figured out a lot of very specific details about, kind of how to work in very prohibitive environments, which has historically also been a problem with like a mobile payments product.
This is going back to like using more near field communications, right?
Well, it's not a function of near field communications as much as figuring out how to awake a device that's kind of in save mode, and like how to do that very quickly. So in any event, they've spent a lot of time minimizing all of the corner cases that go wrong. And when something goes wrong in payments, people get very furious. Either the merchant gets very annoyed because they've lost a sale, or the consumer gets very frustrated because they're trying to do something else and you're getting in their way. So Apple Pay seems to avoid most of those problems, but yet the top level value proposition is a little vague. And so that's the only sort of handicap at the moment, is what's the value proposition. But by cleaning out the clutter, there's a chance it takes off. And then with the mental leap of faith that people, or the mental change where people are getting used to paying through apps, and that's the default way they're starting to pay for things, and you're taking credit card transactions out of the world and putting them onto the phone because of things like Instacart and DoorDash and Uber and Lyft, there's a real shot that this does change over the next 3 years, how people pay for things at scale.
And then final thread on this, what does it mean for companies like Stripe, where you're associated with, Square, where you used to work, and a company like Coin? Is Apple Pay disruptive? Does it create opportunities? Yes and no? Or?
Well, it's obviously been quite an attractive value proposition for Stripe. I think Stripe is the pioneering partner in how app developers could accept Apple Pay. And I think that obviously speaks to Stripe's quality, security, reliability. And so it's probably accelerated Stripe. Square, I think, has some advantages in this case, but it's going to take some time to play out. Like, I think there's new products, new devices that Square will ship and release that may work very well and be quite compatible with Apple Pay, but that's going to take some time. Hardware always takes some time, whether you're doing wearables or some other device. And then I think Coin's got lots of challenges personally, but there's also now more of these coin-oriented companies. Like I was counting the other day, and there's 4 or 5 of them. And they all have somewhat different technologies, somewhat different value propositions, somewhat different management teams. So I think that sector of a unified, card that works everywhere, stores all of your loyalty, stores all of your card. It's not easy to predict how that plays out, but I think Apple Pay could intercept that and, obviate the need for any of those products.